I wasn't looking for anything that night. Not evidence, not trouble. Just some damn quiet. We were at our place, hosting one of those dinner parties Bella insists we need, but that really means she needs. For networking, for showing off our home, for maintaining the image of the effortlessly brilliant creative couple. Bella thrives in these kinds of rooms, laughing in just the right places, topping off everyone's wine glasses, asking follow-up questions like she actually cares. I play my part, shake hands, nod, smile. But inside, I'm counting down the hours. I wasn't mad, not really, just tired. Of the noise, of the stories, of pretending we still lived the life people thought we had. Around the second round of desserts, I told Bella I needed a refill of water and slipped into the kitchen. The kitchen was warm, lights low. A few plates from the appetizers were still stacked by the sink, half-washed. I grabbed a glass from the cabinet and leaned against the counter, letting the silence wrap around me. My ears rang from the party laughter still rolling in from the dining room. I was just about to head back when Bella's phone lit up on the counter beside me. Now, let me be clear, I didn't touch it. I didn't snoop. I just saw it. The screen read, "Digital key, room 508, the Grand Alder Hotel. Guests to, name Josh Rivers." It was one of those clear, sharp moments where everything else fades. I read it once, then again, and a third time to be sure I wasn't imagining it. The Grand Alder. I knew that place. High-end, boutique, luxury poured into every corner. They had valet service even for lunch reservations. Bella and I had gone there once for an anniversary dinner, back when we still bought each other cards and kissed just to kiss. It wasn't the kind of hotel you used for team meetings or design brainstorms. Guests to, Josh Rivers. I didn't recognize the name, but something about it scraped against my nerves. I froze, glass still half full in my hand. I wasn't even breathing. That name, that room number, that hotel, it didn't fit into anything she told me about her day. I hadn't heard her mention any event or photo shoot or post-project celebration. There was no reason she'd be getting a digital room key. Not without telling me. Not with 2 guests attached. A few seconds passed, maybe more. My heart started tapping out a strange rhythm in my chest. I didn't know what to think. Didn't know where to put the information. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe there was a logical explanation. But even thinking that felt like a lie. I was spoon-feeding myself. And then Bella walked in. She was mid-laugh, holding a plate with a half-eaten slice of tiramisu, glass of wine in her other hand, eyes still gleaming from whatever joke she'd just finished in the other room. Her energy didn't falter, not until she saw me, or rather, until she saw her phone. Her whole body shifted, just for a second. She walked faster toward the counter, like she'd remembered something urgent. Her laugh fizzled. Her smile didn't vanish, but it changed. Became tighter, controlled. "Oh," she said, snatching up the phone with a light, practiced chuckle. That's for the design team. We're doing a post-project shoot thing at the Grand Alder. Josh booked the rooms under his name. It's easier that way, apparently." She didn't look at me right away when she said it. Her fingers were flying across the screen, locking the phone like it had done something wrong. Then she looked up, straight at me, with a half-smile that would have fooled anyone else. 2 guests is just part of the app's default setup. It's always set for 2 even if only one person's going. Kinda dumb, right? I didn't answer right away. I nodded. Too quickly. Like someone who wanted to believe it. I forced a smile back. "Yeah, must be." She stepped closer, leaned against the counter like nothing had happened, took a small bite of the tiramisu. "You okay? You've been kind of quiet tonight." "I'm just tired," I said, and it wasn't a lie. "Long day." "Yeah, same," she said. But I noticed she didn't ask what had made my day long. Instead, she turned and peeked back toward the dining room, where our guests were still talking, laughing, drinking. "You should come back out. Adam just opened that bottle you brought from Napa." I said I'd be out in a sec. She nodded and walked back, heels clicking softly against the tile. As soon as she was gone, I looked back at the counter where the phone had been, as if the light from that notification had left a scorch mark. That should have been it. I should have shaken it off. Told myself it really was a team event, a professional thing, a glitchy app, whatever. But my stomach stayed twisted, my mouth dry. Something had shifted. It wasn't about the hotel key. Not really. It was about how she reacted. Bella had always been quick on her feet, a master at defusing tension. But this was different. Too smooth. Too preloaded. She'd scooped up that phone like it was a grenade she'd forgotten to hide. I stared at the faucet for a long time after she left the room. Not thinking. Just listening. To the party, to the silence under it. Trying to figure out if I was being paranoid. If I was becoming that guy. She came back in a few minutes later to grab more napkins and didn't say anything. She smiled, brushed past me, and even gave me a light touch on the shoulder like we were just fine. Like everything was normal. But it wasn't. Later that night, after everyone had left and the house was quiet, Bella went straight to the bathroom. I heard the water running, the electric toothbrush buzzing, the squeak of the mirror cabinet. I sat on the edge of the bed, scrolling through my phone, pretending, waiting. When she came back out, she kissed me on the forehead, like that made us okay, and slid under the covers. She said good night, the same way she always did, with a sleepy slur and a soft smile. I told her good night back. She turned away, fell asleep fast. I didn't. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, thinking about that message, that hotel, that name, Josh Rivers. I didn't know him, but I would. I knew I'd look him up. I knew I'd dig. I didn't want to, but something inside me had already shifted into gear, like a machine waking up after a long, forced nap. The worst part? It wasn't rage. It wasn't jealousy. It wasn't even heartbreak. It was clarity. A stillness I hadn't felt in a long time, like I'd finally stopped convincing myself that I was crazy. I wasn't crazy. I just hadn't been paying close enough attention. Until now. After that night, I started noticing everything. It was like a switch had flipped. One moment I was just living, going through the usual routines, the habits, the shared life Bella and I had built over the years. The next I was awake, watching, rewinding, replaying moments I'd once brushed off without a second thought. It's strange how, once your gut raises a flag, the whole story starts to rearrange itself. And suddenly, things that felt harmless at the time twist into evidence you can't unsee. Take her passwords, for example. Bella used to be the kind of person who couldn't remember any of hers. She was always asking me to reset something or help her recover an account. But a few months ago, she started locking things up tight, new logins, two-factor verifications, even a fingerprint lock on her laptop. When I asked her about it, she said it was company protocol. Some security update from corporate. It sounded legitimate enough. I believed her. Then there were her brainstorm nights. Once a week, sometimes more, she'd claim she had to meet with her team at a local co-working space, usually after dinner. She'd leave around 7, sometimes not come back until after midnight. I didn't push. I wanted to be supportive. I told myself it was her job, her passion. Design is deadline heavy. Creative people need space. But those meetings, they were never on her calendar. I know because I checked. Not right away. It wasn't like I turned into a detective overnight. But after the hotel notification, I opened her shared calendar one evening while pretending to look at our upcoming dentist appointments. And those late-night sessions? They didn't exist. Not even a placeholder. And Bella is nothing if not organized. She color codes things. She adds emojis to recurring meetings. But these brainstorms had vanished into thin air. I told myself there had to be a reason. That's the lie you cling to when you're scared to confront the truth. There has to be a reason. Then came the jewelry. Bella's style has always been minimal, simple studs, clean silver lines, nothing too flashy. But over the last couple of months, she started wearing pieces I didn't recognize. A thin gold chain with a tiny triangle pendant. A set of textured rings she twisted whenever she was nervous. And the perfume, God, the perfume. She used to avoid strong scents altogether, said they gave her headaches. But now, she wore one that lingered in the hallways, musky and floral and not her. I didn't ask about it. I didn't want to hear another perfect, airtight explanation. There were other signs. Smaller ones, maybe, but no less significant. Once, I found a strange pair of scuffed boot prints by the front door. Darker than mine, narrower at the toe. I asked if her brother had dropped by. She blinked, paused, then said it must have been the mail carrier. Said he'd stepped inside when she had to sign for a package. Except we had a camera doorbell. And there was no delivery that day. Then there was that night she came home late, hair styled like she'd just come from a photo shoot. Said she'd been stuck in the elevator at work with a few coworkers. She told the story like it was a funny little mishap. But her makeup looked fresh. Her shoes were too clean. And there was a faint red mark on her collarbone where a necklace chain had dug in. One I was pretty sure she hadn't been wearing that morning. I wanted to ask more questions. I really did. But every time I tried, even when I'd carefully worded things, framed them in a soft tone, brought them up gently, Bella had a way of disarming the moment. She'd sigh, or roll her eyes, or smile like I was a child asking where the moon goes during the day. Then she'd say things like, "You've been so anxious lately. You sure you're not just projecting? Or maybe you need to talk to someone. Work's been stressing you out." Huh? It wasn't angry. It was worse, it was soothing. Like she was comforting me for imagining things. I started feeling like I couldn't even trust my own thoughts. She'd make these little jokes in front of our friends, too. Subtle but sharp enough to land. Matt's always been a little paranoid. She'd say when I asked her why she changed the Wi-Fi password without telling me, "He's got a suspicious brain. Must be all that true crime he listens to." Everyone would laugh. And I'd laugh, too. Because what else was I supposed to do? Sometimes I'd catch her watching me when she thought I wasn't looking. Her eyes would narrow for just a second, studying me like she was measuring something. Not in a loving way, in a calculating one. And then she'd shift back into her usual self. Funny, affectionate, put together. But the look lingered. I stopped sleeping well. I'd lie in bed beside her, listening to her soft breathing, the gentle click of her phone as she scrolled late into the night. She'd turn away from me, always angling the screen just far enough so I couldn't see. I tried not to care. I tried to convince myself that this was just a rough patch, just my mind playing tricks on me. But there's only so many tricks a mind can play before the truth starts screaming. One night, I finally broke. It was around 2 a.m., and I couldn't stop turning things over in my head. The hotel notification, the missing calendar invites, the new perfume, the strange texts that popped up with only emojis and first names. So I got up and went to the kitchen, made tea, stared at nothing. Bella came in a few minutes later, rubbing her eyes. "You okay?" she asked, her voice scratchy with sleep. "Just couldn't sleep," I said. She looked me over. "You've been quiet lately." I nodded. Didn't know how to answer that. Quiet wasn't the word. I was unraveling. She stepped closer, rested her hand on my arm. "Is something wrong?" she asked. A tilt in her head, soft concern painted across her face like brushstrokes. I looked at her, really looked. She had a tiny smudge of lipstick still on the edge of her mouth. Not fresh, faint, a ghost of a shade I didn't recognize. I almost asked her about it. But instead I said, "I'm fine." She kissed my cheek, told me to come back to bed. I followed her a few minutes later, crawled under the sheets, and laid there staring at the ceiling again. My mind was screaming into a void, and all I could do was pretend it wasn't. That was the worst part of it all. Not knowing for sure, not being able to prove anything. Just this slow bleed of trust, this constant re-questioning of reality. And through it all, Bella never slipped, never snapped, never got defensive, because she didn't need to. She had mastered control through dismissal. There's a difference between suspicion and proof. Suspicion is a storm cloud that follows you around, unpredictable and heavy, but still abstract. You carry an umbrella, maybe change your plans, but you tell yourself it might not rain. Proof, though? Proof is thunder. A lightning strike, straight through the center of your chest. Proof leaves no room for maybes. I got my lightning strike on a Thursday. Bella had told me the night before that she'd be out of town overnight for a work event in Hillbridge. about an hour away. Some new co-working space was opening up and her team had rented out the place for a creativity retreat. She'd packed light, just one weekend bag, her laptop, and a sketchbook she hadn't touched in weeks. I didn't ask questions. I'd stopped asking questions. Every answer sounded rehearsed anyway. I watched her drive away that morning, her taillights disappearing down the street. I stood by the front window longer than I needed to. I don't know why. Maybe I was waiting for her to come back. Maybe I was hoping I'd imagined it all. That the lie wasn't a lie, that the distance between us was just routine. Instead, I got a knock on the door. It was Grace, Bella's sister. We weren't especially close, but we got along. She was the kind of person who noticed things, quiet, observant, never one to dominate a conversation. She stood on the porch in a hoodie and jeans, clutching a manila envelope like it weighed 100 pounds. "Hey," she said, eyes flicking toward the street. "Hey," I said, confused. "Everything okay?" She didn't answer right away, just handed me the envelope. I didn't know what else to do. I thought you should see this." She turned to leave before I could even open it. Inside was a flash drive. I didn't wait. I went straight to my laptop, slid the drive in, and clicked the only file on it. It was grainy security footage, muted, time-stamped, unblinking. Took me a second to realize where it was. The lobby of the Grand Alder Hotel. A view from behind the check-in desk, angled toward the elevators. The timestamp read 12:17 a.m. There she was, Bella, walking through the glass doors in a long tan coat and heels, her hair up in that loose, casual bun she always wore when she didn't want to try too hard, but still somehow looked perfect. She wasn't alone. A man walked beside her, taller than me, sharp suit, graphite-colored. No hesitation in his posture. His hand brushed her back as they passed the check-in desk, casual but not unfamiliar. She looked up at him, smiled, a real smile, the kind that starts in your eyes and takes over your whole face. They reached the elevator. He pressed the button. She leaned into him, slowly, gently, and he kissed her. It wasn't a hungry, spur-of-the-moment kind of kiss. It wasn't reckless. It was soft, intimate, familiar. The elevator doors opened. They stepped in. Her hand lingered on his arm just a little longer than necessary. And then they were gone. That was it. No sound. No hotel room footage. No audio recordings. Just enough to turn suspicion into proof. I didn't move for a long time. Just stared at the paused frame on the screen. Bella's face lit by the elevator's soft yellow light. Her eyes locked on his. That look. That goddamn look. It wasn't just that she cheated. It was that she belonged to someone else in that moment. Completely. Effortlessly. I shut the laptop. The house around me felt different now. Same walls, same furniture, but hollow. A set. A stage. I stood in the living room and looked at the couch where we used to sit with wine and reruns. I walked past the kitchen where she used to hum while making coffee. Everything echoed. Eventually, I went into the office. Not hers, mine. It was the one space she never spent much time in. I turned it into a small workshop last year. A quiet place where I could restore old gear. Cameras, mostly. I liked the solitude. The ritual of disassembly and repair. There was something soothing about bringing something broken back to life. That's when I saw it. On the shelf above the workbench. A printed invoice. Half tucked behind a stack of folders. It was folded neatly. I pulled it out. It was a shipping document. From our home address to someone named Josh Rivers. My pulse spiked. Item. 1954 Leica M3 camera with original submicron lens. I stared at the paper. That camera, my camera, was a project I'd been working on for almost a year. Found it at a flea market in Maine. Half broken. Its gears jammed. The light meter fried. I'd spent months getting it functional again. It was my white whale. And she gave it away. To him. I didn't even know she knew where I kept it. I tore through the drawers, opened every cabinet, checked the shelf where the camera used to sit. Empty. She hadn't just cheated. She'd taken something sacred and handed it to the man she betrayed me with. Piece of my time. My craft. My memory. Gone. The betrayal wasn't just physical, it was personal, strategic, cruel. I didn't yell. I didn't punch a wall or break a chair. I just sat there in the quiet, trying to remember when the rot had started. I used to believe betrayal came in a flash, in a moment of weakness or heat or emotional confusion. But this wasn't sudden. This had been designed, premeditated, executed. I don't know how long I sat there before I noticed the other box in the corner. One I hadn't opened in months. It was a shipping crate I used to store film reels and photography logs. The tape was fresh, curious now, cautious. I opened it. Inside was the Leica case. I opened that too. No camera, just papers. And tucked inside one unlabeled SD card. I plugged it into my laptop. There were a few files, PDFs, some scanned documents, and one audio file. I clicked it. Bella's voice. He still believes we're a family. That buys me time. There was a pause. A laugh. Not the one she used at parties. Colder one. Lower. I'm almost done here. One last thing and I'm gone. I paused the recording. I didn't listen to the rest. There wasn't a part of me left that wanted to know more. I had enough. Proof. Hard proof. Video. Audio. Paper trail. I leaned back in my chair, the quiet pressing against my ears. That was the moment it all died. Not with a scream or a door slam or a shouted confession. Just a file. Just her voice, stripped of affection. Mechanical. Distant. Like I was nothing but an obstacle she needed to clear. I don't know how long I sat there, but eventually I got up, and I began collecting everything. The next morning, I drove to the address on the shipping form. It was a half-hour outside the city, near the industrial district. A maze of warehouses, storage units, and shuttered factories that all looked the same in the early light. The kind of place no one notices, no matter how many times they drive by. According to the invoice, it was a private storage facility. The kind Bella used to joke were glorified closets for people with commitment issues. I pulled up to the gate, entered the code from the form, and watched as it slid open with a groan. The air smelled like oil and dust. Rows of numbered doors stretched out like a graveyard. I found the one that matched the address, Unit 47B, and stood there for a long moment, keys in hand. Inside, the unit was cold and silent. A single fluorescent bulb flickered to life overhead. In the center of the concrete floor sat a large crate, sealed with heavy packing tape. My name wasn't on it, but I recognized Bella's handwriting scrawled across the side. Fragile photo equipment. My stomach turned. I pried the crate open with a screwdriver from my car. Inside was a layer of bubble wrap, then another, and beneath that, the Leica case, the one I'd restored. Except this time, it wasn't just a camera. It was a container. No film, no lens, just papers. Dozens of them. Folded, stamped, official-looking. Some were foreign, in French, in German. And they weren't fake receipts or shipping labels like I first thought. They were identification papers. 2 birth certificates with different names. Bank account printouts from banks I'd never heard of. One document listed a property in Lisbon under the name Sabrina Cole. Sabrina Cole. Not Bella. Not even close. I felt my pulse in my throat. I wasn't sure whether to laugh or panic. I sat on the floor of the storage unit and started flipping through everything, trying to make sense of it. There were 2 passports, one with Bella's face, one slightly altered, her hair darker, her eyes touched up. Same woman, different life. The dates didn't make sense. Some of them predated our marriage. That's when I noticed a small padded envelope taped to the inside of the crate lid. It was marked only with a single word. Listen. Inside was a micro SD card. I hesitated before putting it into my phone, but I had to know. My hands were shaking. The file began to play automatically. It was Bella's voice again. But this time, she wasn't whispering. She was speaking clearly, professionally, almost like she was reporting something. Phase 2 is complete. I've kept him occupied. He still believes we're a family. That buys me time. A pause. A faint rustle of paper. Then, the camera was the perfect cover. He restored it himself. Nobody questions the packaging. The documents are ready. I'll send the final piece through once he's out of town. The recording ended there. I just sat there, staring at the concrete wall. I felt detached from my own body, like the air had been sucked out of the world. Everything I thought I knew about my life, my wife, our marriage, it all twisted into something unrecognizable. She wasn't just unfaithful. She was using me, using us. For months, maybe years. All the pieces started snapping into place. The late nights, the missing files, the sudden passwords, the strategic charm. Even the way she'd handled me emotionally, turning my suspicions back on me, making me feel small, paranoid, unstable. It wasn't just manipulation for convenience. It was control. A calculated system designed to keep me harmless. I opened my phone, scrolled through her old messages. There was one labeled Archive, hidden under a folder I'd never noticed before. Inside were dozens of deleted drafts, unsent messages, encrypted attachments. I didn't recognize most of the recipients, but one name appeared again and again: J.R. Logistics. Josh Rivers. The man from the hotel. I opened one of the drafts. It read like a list, coded, but close enough to understand. Transfer confirmed. Final copy in storage. Move contact to Lisbon. Another read, he suspects nothing. The Leica's en route. The Leica's en route. I laughed out loud. A short, bitter sound that echoed off the walls. That line stuck in my head, repeating until it didn't even sound like words anymore. It was just noise. Meaningless but final. I sat there for hours, maybe longer, just piecing things together. There was a cold logic to it all. Bella hadn't stumbled into an affair. She'd constructed one. Josh wasn't just a lover, he was a tool, a collaborator. Or maybe another pawn like me. And me? I was the perfect cover story. The quiet husband with the workshop, the artist who ordered strange parts and shipments all the time. Who would ever question that? I'd unknowingly been her front, her alibi. The Leica wasn't just a gift. It was a vessel. A Trojan horse disguised as nostalgia. When I finally drove home, the world outside looked different. People walking dogs, kids at bus stops. All of it looked like background noise, like I was watching from behind glass. At home, the house was spotless. Her coffee mug was still on the counter, lipstick faintly marking the rim. I stared at it for a long time. That small, ordinary stain. Proof of the woman she pretended to be. I packed everything, the papers, the recordings, the envelopes, into a box. Labeled it evidence. I didn't even know who I'd show it to. The police? A lawyer? A private investigator? It didn't matter. It wasn't about revenge. It was about clarity. For the first time in months, maybe years, I saw her clearly. Bella wasn't reckless. She wasn't impulsive. She wasn't even in love with someone else. She was gone. Maybe she'd always been gone. The person I fell in love with, just a construct. A projection she needed me to believe in while she built her real life in the shadows. It's strange how grief changes shape when you realize the person you're mourning never actually existed. I didn't feel rage. I didn't even feel heartbreak. I felt clean, empty, like someone had finally opened a window in a room that had been sealed for years. By the time the sun set, I'd locked the box away in the closet. Then I sat down at my desk, opened my journal, something I hadn't touched in months, and wrote one line. Nothing accidental. Everything was planned. It was the only sentence that made sense anymore. I wasn't sure what I expected walking into Josh Rivers' office. Maybe hostility, maybe smugness, or maybe some kind of confrontation where he tried to justify everything. Lay the blame at my feet like people do when they've run out of real excuses. But what I found was none of that. The receptionist didn't even blink when I said my name. Matt, I told her. That was it. No last name, no company. Just Matt. She looked down at something on her screen, nodded and said, "He's been expecting you." That stopped me in my tracks. She motioned down the hall. Third door on the right. I walked slowly, part of me still waiting for the ambush. But there was no trap. Just quiet offices, low lighting, glass walls that blurred the edges of everything. Josh's door was open. He was sitting behind his desk, not in a suit like I'd seen in the hotel video, but in a faded t-shirt and a tired expression. He looked older in person, not in years, but in the way people age when they stop pretending to be someone else. He didn't look surprised to see me. He didn't stand either. "Matt," he said, "come in." I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. There was a long silence. Not tense. Just heavy. Then Josh gestured to the chair across from him. "You're not the first guy to show up like this," he said. "But I'm guessing you're not here to throw a punch." "I'm not," I replied. He gave a small nod, almost respectful. "Good. I'm tired of being punched." I sat down. For a while, neither of us spoke. It was strange. This man who had kissed my wife in a hotel elevator, who had slept beside her, planned things with her, lied with her, he didn't seem like a villain. He looked like someone who had been lied to, too. "Why'd you do it?" I asked finally. Josh didn't answer right away. He reached into his desk drawer, pulled out a folder, and slid it across the table toward me. Inside were documents, copies of emails, texts, receipts. One caught my eye immediately. The lease agreement for the storage unit where I'd found the Leica and the false documents. "She told me she needed a place to store work materials," he said. "Said her home office was being remodeled." My hands tightened on the folder. I could feel my jaw clench. He continued. "She used my name on the lease. Said it would keep it cleaner, less red tape, less suspicion." I didn't ask questions. She was persuasive. I looked up at him. "You knew she was married?" He nodded. "Yeah. At first she said it was complicated. That you were separated. That you were sleeping in different rooms. You know the drill." "She tell you my name?" "Not until I found out on my own. I hired someone. That caught me off guard." "You hired a PI?" He gave a grim little smile. "When someone disappears for 3 days without telling you and then shows up acting like nothing happened, you start asking questions. I had someone look into her background." "What did they find?" He exhaled. "Everything." I waited. "She's not just using you," he said. "She's using me too. Or was. She has other names. Sabrina Cole is one. I found a travel document under that alias. Another one, Ella Vance. She had a P.O. box under that name. I started digging, and the more I found, the less sense it made. She was building a network. False trails. Assets in other people's names. And none of us had the full picture. I sat back, stunned. "How long were you two involved?" "Almost a year," he said quietly. "We weren't together constantly. She always had an excuse. Work, family, out of town. But when we were together, it felt real. That's what messed with me the most." I could feel the bitterness in his voice, but also something else, grief. "She ended it," he added. "That surprised me. She said she couldn't risk it anymore. That things were getting too close, too tangled. She'd found someone else, a better option, she called it." I blinked. "She told you that?" "She didn't say it outright," he replied. "But I'm not stupid." She stopped answering calls. Emails bounced. And then I saw footage from the office, her arriving early one morning with another guy. Same look in her eyes she used to give me. "So," I said, trying to process all of it, "you were just one of many." He nodded. "Guess we both were." He leaned forward, elbows on the desk. "You ever wonder what any of it meant to her?" "All the time." "And you ever get the sense it was all scripted? Like every reaction, every smile, even the arguments were just layers?" I swallowed. "Yeah, I do." We sat in silence again. Then he said, "I'm not looking for redemption. I knew what I was doing. I just didn't know how far it went." I opened the folder again, scanned the paperwork. His name really was on the lease. The payment records matched the dates. Bella had told me she was pulling late nights at the office. She had orchestrated all of it. 2 lives, maybe 3. Like a stage director who forgot the audience was watching. "Why did you keep all this?" I asked. "Because I wanted to remind myself I'm not crazy," he said. That hit a little too close to home. He stood and walked over to a cabinet in the corner of the room. From it, he pulled out a small box and handed it to me. Inside was a roll of undeveloped 35mm film, the kind my Leica would have used. "She left that behind," he said. "Figured you'd want it." I held the film in my hand, unsure what to feel. It was light, but it carried weight. Not just literal, symbolic. Evidence, memory, artifact. Proof of the blur between our lives. He looked at me one last time. "Whatever you decide to do with all this court, cops, lawyers, I won't fight it. I've got nothing left in this. I'm not here for vengeance," I told him. "I know," he said. "That's why I let you in." I left the office with the folder, the film, and a strange sense of solidarity. Not forgiveness, but something adjacent. Josh wasn't the man I thought he'd be. He wasn't a predator. He was a casualty. A mirror. Another person who fell for the version of Bella that wasn't real. On the drive home, I kept glancing at the box on the passenger seat. The film inside it rattled softly with each bump in the road. And for a second, I had the oddest thought. What if I developed it? What would be on it? But I already knew. Not photos. Just ghosts. Bella vanished. No calls, no goodbyes. Just a note. "I need a break. It's not you. It's me." Half her clothes were gone. Bank accounts? Closed. The only trace left. A shipping notification for the Leica. She wasn't coming back. Not really. I boxed the evidence, labeled it in case she returns. But deep down I knew. She hadn't slipped. She had planned her exit. 2 weeks later she knocked, barefoot, eyes red. Said she was sorry, lost, that she never meant to hurt me. In her hands, cash, a missing lens, and a key to a P.O. box. Compensation, she called it. I took the lens. Nothing else. I didn't speak. Just closed the door. That night, I reassembled the Leica, snapped one photo of the wall, light and shadow. Not evidence. Just closure. She built the maze. I walked out, not healed, but whole.